Well, all gas, no breaks here, as Andy Murray was just telling me before we got on the podcast. No days off here. Never want to have any doubt. Yeah, the hardest working men here in the podcast game for the XFL and the USFL. I'm here at the world famous Luxor. You can see the pyramid, the slanted behind me. I'm going to bring in Andy now. My voice is a little like we're working today. We're working overtime. I have my Shannon Sharp here. Andy Murray, how are you doing?
I'm doing quite well. It looked like you discovered fire last night, essentially, based on the photo that you posted.
Yeah, let me see if I can pull that photo up here. We're here today, week 8 of the XFL. Dorothy is sleeping here in the bed somewhere behind me. Try not to be too loud today. Lots to talk about today. We have TV ratings, XFL. We have 2 overtime games. Everything else that probably makes more sense to do this on Tuesdays during the season anyway. But we want to do the Mondays, all that. A couple things too. I'll let me first share this. So this was exciting. So this is what Andy was talking about. This was me at the Mirage last night. I discovered fire. Apparently, we went out. They said that they're going to do this volcano show at 7:00. We go outside. They shot off fire. We're like 30 seconds, and then like, okay, that's the show. That's the show. I saw Michael Ball last night walking around. Not really, but I did see a Saskatchewan Rough Rider there. And then they were playing the highlights, I guess, in full of the USFL championship game at the Yard House last night. And I actually got a tweet back from Yard House. I tweeted and they said, "Oh, having a celebratory beer." So I can't pull that up. But anyway, very exciting here talking about all of that. Andy, how are you doing? Thoughts about XFL Week 8 before we get into all the minutiae here?
This was the wildest week, I think, for the XFL in a lot of ways. And in my opinion, I think it was some of the best quality games of the entire season from front to back. Every game, there was a combined margin of 9 points amongst all of the games. Now, every kind of game had its own flavor. Some were high scoring affairs. Other ones were a little more sluggish. Some were really exciting with some absolutely fantastic, like special teams plays, individual plays, team, coaching mismanagement, all kinds of things. I think we got the full palette. And most significantly of all, we got 2 overtime games. Finally, Sam Schwartzstein's vision has played out in full here in the XFL, and we finally got to see those 2 overtimes. I know the first one happened in the USFL last year. That is an adopted rule. Let's make that clear. This is the first time that we really got to see where the original rule and play design in the book finally got to play out on the field. And the fact that they got 2 of them the same weekend is pretty wild. And one of them being on ABC, which we'll get into later, obviously, about the TV ratings, pretty significant as well. So a wider audience was able to see that. A lot of people got to see the 2 overtimes, but just a wild weekend. And obviously a lot to talk about with the playoff shifts. The North and South divisions really shaking themselves up and kind of coming to fruition as far as who's probably going to win those divisions now.
Yeah, I got a lot of messages like, I can't believe the XFL and the USFL overtime rules are the same. It's like, well, it is what it is. I want to give Sam credit for that. I know he's in kind of a different employment situation now where he can't really come on and talk XFL stuff, but really exciting for Sam and really exciting to kind of see that. I couldn't imagine, here we waited all 2020, coming in here, that we had 2 overtime the same weekend. But I think that also speaks to just the parity of the teams, right? I think at this point you get down, and I think the Houston Brahmas game was maybe a little bit more, but we had Vipers and the Battlehawks going back and forth, kind of getting that overtime. I think it just speaks right to the closer level of competition there.
Yeah, it was absolutely fantastic all weekend. I know there wasn't a lot to be had on some of the offensive ends, like San Antonio just really was sluggish until the very last minute. Orlando, really disappointing, honestly, considering that I sang the praises of Quentin Dormady last week, and he goes from 6 total touchdowns to 5 turnovers. I mean, that is one of the biggest turnarounds I've ever seen, week-to-week performance ever. You have, obviously, there's a lot of fluctuation going on with Arlington. I do think that Luis Perez brings stability. The Spring King has arrived again. He has brought balance to the force, as we say, and he really did his job. They just needed some measured balance and stability. Him not turning the ball over, him keeping it really consistent for everything on the end of the Arlington operation, which just needs basically anything to go right. I mean, look, their offensive operation before he arrived there was essentially someone leaving the house and it burning down. It was just Stoops being like, here, how about we don't burn the house down on offense today? And that's all he had to do. And he did his job. So I think that's good. DC, I'm sorry, man. DC is just fantastic on all ends on offense. Tamu is playing the best football of his entire life. I've never seen him throw the ball like this before. And the fact that they can run it the way they can with the RPO and throw it downfield now, I mean, they have everything they need on offense. That is easily the most complete offense I've seen in spring football, maybe ever. I would almost argue.
Yeah, not great for the Cheese Dragons. We'll get into all that. Yeah, Daryl or Jenna's checking in here. Good morning from Southern California. Daryl Reed. Yeah, I'm in the Luxor right now, the world famous Luxor here. We're in the ninth floor. Mark has a funny read. Are you making the pilgrimage to the hallowed grounds of Cashman Field? No, but I did go out. We went out last night with Dorothy's friend and her husband, and he had a Las Vegas Aviators hat on. You know, the infamous baseball team where the XFL couldn't play. Remember the minor league baseball team. Jen is excited to win with. So let's get into the ratings here first and foremost, and then we'll do all the game breakdown here. A little delayed on the games here being Tuesday, but obviously Mike Mitchell, a ratings just coming out here this morning, 868,000 for ESPN, St. Louis, Vegas, getting that overtime game. Orlando, Arlington, 679 on ESPN. And then on Sunday, this is what was impressive to me, Easter. I didn't really know, and attendance and all of that. We had Sunday, ABC 1.0006 million, and then the ESPN 2 game of 487,000. A big rebound, and we can pull up here if you want, if you want to do the read homerisms here. USFL on Fox back in week 8, 625,000 and 773,000. So a little perspective there. Andy, what did you make? And I know we were talking in the group chat today. What did you make of the ratings?
I mean, it's pretty remarkable considering that you have multiple games here in the top 10 of cable programming. I think Mike Mitchell also tweeted that out earlier as well. St. Louis, Vegas was 6th, and Orlando, Arlington was 10th in their demographic amongst 18 to 49-year-olds, I think. So that's pretty good. I mean, yeah, there it is on the screen. So that's really good. That's good rebound numbers. Obviously, there was a lot of speculation as what was going to happen. Obviously, March Madness was just a giant storm that came through. It was inevitable. It was going to happen. You had, women's college basketball getting historic ratings. You had, baseball starting, NBA kind of winding down here towards the playoffs. You just had a lot going on. And so it was not clear as to where these ratings were going to ultimately end up in the month of April. But it seemed like they've kind of weathered the storm and they've figured out, at least as far as which time slots, again, which ones are most consistent. Again, this Saturday day, Sunday day stuff needs to keep happening. This is the best time slots that you need to have for your programming. 10 a.m., 1 p.m. Saturday. Sunday was 12 and 4. Like, that's great. Even on Easter, and also on Easter. I mean, that's the thing. You got these ratings on Easter weekend. Like, that's really remarkable, honestly. A lot of people traveling, a lot of people doing stuff. Now, I myself do not personally celebrate Easter. In fact, I tried going to Target foolishly and didn't realize that it was actually a holiday. So, I'm one of those ignorant people that doesn't, partake in those festivities, but a lot of people do. And so for you to get those kinds of ratings on that weekend is pretty remarkable. I have to ask you, though, how was it? Obviously, you went to the Dragons game on Easter itself. I know it was very rainy. It was very, it was very sloggy up there, but still a great game. How was it for you and like the atmosphere and the people traveling up there?
Yeah, that was the thing. I was really kind of concerned what Easter was going to be. I think Mike had the attendance at 11,000 there at Lumen Field. It was pouring rain. This wasn't normal Seattle rain. This was torrential downpour. You saw the photos I posted. I'm in my snow pants and boots. We were very concerned because at Lumen Field, there's no, unless you're really, really far up, there's no cover at all. You're sitting there, we're front row. It was really miserable, right? From just a be in their perspective, certainly not from anything that they did. So I was impressed. I was impressed with the TV ratings here, 500,000, ESPN2 on Easter, and then obviously getting 11,000 plus there at Lumen. I think that was the highest viewer attendance of any of the Lumen games thus far. I know we've had the Krakens of it all and kind of everything else that there was no Kraken. I don't know, like, do we establish Easter as another football day? I don't know if that's a thing, but I think for first year, I think they should be really happy. I tweeted out, I said, I don't want to hear any of the Seattle doesn't show up. Like, that was a horrendous day, and they had a lot of people there, especially on the non-TV side, all the way up. It was really packed.
Yeah, all things considered, I think that's the best you can ask for. And again, they were treated to a fantastic game if you did end up showing up. But I mean, look, it's the same thing with like Sounders games, right? People show up to those regardless of conditions too. Seattle, I believe in the Seattle fan base. I really do. I think they just have to tweak some things going forward. You have more, obviously, have more boots on the ground there in regards to that. But I think
snow boots in the rain.
No, you're wearing boots. I thought you were wearing boots. I saw some boots in those photos. Did you Photoshop those in?
No, yeah, I was being made fun of. I had Jared. I go, Jared, you live in Orlando. Jared's like, what do you do with these snow boots? I go, we can't all go to 90-degree Orlando Guardian games here. It's freaking pouring rain here.
I mean, look, we have the opposite problem here in San Diego. If there's ever a team, there's no cover, period. So we'd more get turned into lobsters if we went out into games here because of the lack of sun coverage. So.
Max was quick to correct it. 15,000 earlier this season. That's fine. I feel like they've. When was that? Was that the week? That wouldn't have been the first week. That would have been. It wasn't the 20-degree whatever game. Okay, they had 15,000 there. Whatever. Let's get into the games. Let's talk about that first and foremost. We'll go back to front. This DC Seattle game, which was really stupendous. Obviously, we lost. Not happy about that. Was this the game of the weekend? Was this one of the games of the highlights of the year so far?
Every game that DC is in is like the game of the year. I mean, the Orlando game was already one of them, but this one, given the implications and given the style of play and given what happened, I mean, you have 30 combined points in the fourth quarter. Like, it was absolutely batty. You had Ben DiNucci out of his mind throwing down the field. I'm glad that Seattle was really attacking the seams against DC. I know our guy, Pat, was really on that a few weeks ago when he was talking about St. Louis. Like, why didn't they attack? Why didn't Bruce Gradkowski in the offense, have AJ McCarron attack the seams? Because you can throw on this defense. You absolutely can. With the way that Greg Williams' scheme is run up, you can throw the ball down the field. They did that all game long. I know they had that one turnover. It was really a batted ball. It was unfortunate for DiNucci. I know I joked about like, all right, well, here comes Hazlitt with the machete, but it really wasn't. That one wasn't his fault. I have to give him that one. That really wasn't his fault this time. So he had, for all intents and purposes, he had a pretty good game. He was using his legs. He was calm. He was throwing down the field. It was just seeing Seattle kind of unearth themselves from being down 22-6. That was really the turning point, right? That conversion attempt return, which was so weird because there was whistles that were blown on the field. I don't know if you could hear them, but we could on TV. But apparently no one else did, and they kept the play going. So that was really weird. But that was the turning point. Like I said, DC, I mean, they can do whatever the hell they want on offense. Abram Smith is just a mean SOB. He can run the ball with such authority. I love the way that they were able to, again, get some of these people involved, like, Chris Blair, and obviously you have Lucky Jackson. You have downfield options. And there were a lot of plays they didn't even make. A lot of their tight ends dropped balls straight up. They had some fantastic play design set up where their receivers were going to be able to get some big chunk yardage, and they either Tomo maybe missed the throw, or maybe the tight end dropped it or something. Like, they had a couple of scores that they left on the board too. So, just all around fantastic. It's great to see Tomo kind of resurrect himself after. Look, I know he played in the USFL last year and he had all these leading categories and he threw the most touchdowns. He wasn't fitting in that offense. Him and Todd Haley were not a fit. They did not work together. The scheme didn't work well for his skill set. It wasn't good. And Tomo, quite frankly, struggled in the first few weeks of this season, too. They didn't really throw very much. They're kind of figuring out what to do with him, but he has been absolutely on fire the past 3 weeks. This has been really a renaissance for him, honestly. And if he continues to develop like this, I mean, DC, I don't know. It's going to be really hard to game plan for them on defense, even with some of the best coaching staffs in the league. It's really, really hard to game plan for this. And I don't blame Seattle. I just think at some point it was just hard to keep up with them.
Yeah, I didn't Abram Smith was just killing it running through. He did have a face mask. He had it was when he got tackled, kind of had a face mask. I didn't like that. We had Mike here talking the 3-point conversion. That was really crazy, getting the penalty and then getting backed up and having to do that. where they ran the ball back and got the 2 points, like you said, if there were whistles blown or whatever, there was a lot of refs standing around like, oh no, what did we do here? And there had been the really bad, I think, no pass interference call on Seattle in the end zone, or it was the other way. And so if the refs like hadn't have gotten that right with them running the back and get the 2 points, I think there would have been chaos, hysteria. I said I was going to jump the fence and go attack some of the referees. Really, really bad officiating, I thought, this week, especially in the Seattle game. I want to get Dean back on the podcast. Obviously, we're out of town this week and doing the live show Friday, but I want to get Dean's thoughts because I know that people have been really down on him, even in the stands, us talking and fans around like, God, this is another blown call. It's another. Are you surprised we're still getting so many missed calls, no calls, bad calls, the challenges and getting overtime? Are you surprised that we still are having so much trouble with this?
This is a thing that I've talked about not only on this podcast, but in other podcasts too. The problem is there's so much there's just so much interpretation for the rules, for the legislation of the rules. And look, Dean explains it clearly. Obviously, he explains it clear as day, but the way he explains it on the broadcast sometimes just doesn't really match up with our visual determination of what we think a foul is. Like there was a foul in the St. Louis, I think it might have been the St. Louis game. I can't remember which one, but there was one where it was just clearly guy had his back to the passer. Guy throws the ball. It looks clear to me like it's pass interference. It might be the Seattle game. I'm not sure.
It was the Seattle game. He didn't turn around. And then they said, well, then we no DB ever has to turn around then. If you don't have to play the ball at all, then what are we doing here?
Exactly. And that was my problem too. I was like, well, then what about all the other times I've seen in my entire life as a football fan that has educated me saying like, well, then so that all those times they didn't turn around, were those incorrect calls? Like, was that because that's been the golden rule in football is for a DB is like you turn your back to the ball, you are going to get fouled. If you don't look, I don't care how many, how handsy they're being or what kind of roughing, you have to look at the ball. You have to turn around. You have to look at it. If you're not, that's literally pass interference. So I don't understand that legislation of that rule, the explanation from Dean, because that didn't line up with what I've seen in the NFL. And if it doesn't line up with what I've seen in the NFL, that's the other thing. Like, what is he trying to change the legislation based on like this being a different league? You need to ask him some of these questions because to me it's been questionable. It's been questionable as far as what exactly is he trying to orchestrate here as far as this being a new entity. Is he trying to like re-legislate? Is he trying to create a new sense of the rules? Obviously, being a different playbook and all that and challengeable things and him being more transparent. But I just want to know, does he have more authority? There's a lot to work out here. And it is frustrating as a fan and as a viewer because you hear him clear as day and what you're seeing on screen is not matching up with what you're hearing on the broadcast.
Well, that's the thing is when I was on Rod Peterson's show, I think it was a week or two ago, he was asking about this because, this is something in the XFL and, they preach this and transparency, everything else. I said, yeah, but like getting to hear them talk through a bad call doesn't make the bad call any like less egregious, right? Like you're just more frustrated because I'm hearing Dean now talk about it. Like, well, it's still not a good call, and you talking him through. And I like Dean. I think he's really personable. I think he's better than Pereira in that regard. I don't like Mike Pereira in that regard. Is like the overseer of it, but it is hard. It's frustrating. Anything else from a gameplay perspective on here? I know people are chirping about this. We had some weird the Seattle going for one instead of two, kind of little ticky tacky stuff that way. Really felt like the game could have gone either way there at the end, even though DC is far and away the better team. But Seattle held in there. Were you surprised that Seattle was kind of able to go toe to toe?
No, I wasn't. I look, their offense on a good day is very lethal. When Ben DiNucci is not turning the ball over, they can move the ball at will. I hope to continue to see Philip Lindsay. He looked really good, at least in the limited action he had. And he seemed to be really into it. He seemed to be engaged enough as far as the audio goes. He seems like he's really professional and knows what he's doing. He really knows how to handle himself. I think this is a great signing for them. I hope it works out for them down the road if they even get to, well, we'll talk about playoff scenarios later, but if they get to that point, look, Seattle, I mean, they can run with anybody in this league. They have the horses to do it. It's just been circumstance of turnovers, sometimes bad calls, sometimes maybe June Jones getting a little too big for his britches with the conversion attempts, but I don't blame them for going for two. I think that was the right decision. I don't think you want to play for overtime. You don't want to mess with DC. I think DC just at some point was going to wear you down in that exchange. I'm sure they would have thought otherwise, but again, I think going for 2 was the right play, especially with how they were moving the ball. I completely understand. It's just Greg Williams' defense blitzed at the correct time at a lot of times. They were able to get through the A gap and really disrupt the flow of the offense. And that was really the only thing that was working for him at that point, because he was getting absolutely shredded on the back end by all of these receivers. I mean, everybody was just running free. I mean, Josh Gordon completely planted Michael Joseph. I mean, he decleated him on the sideline. I'm not sure how good a view you had that, but that was insane to watch.
I had a very good view of that, and I was yelling at Michael Joseph very loud. I said, "How did you like that? How did you like that?"
Oh my God, that was that was a man's moment for Josh Gordon. But that I mean, that's the thing. Like, Seattle can keep with. It's a shame. I mean, it's just it was going to be a 1.2 point game. It felt like that going into this weekend, and Evan was kind of prophetic. Our guy, Evan Wilsmore, at I think halfway through the fourth quarter, he's like, this is going to be a 34-33 ball game, isn't it? I'm like, I can't say you're wrong. I hate to say it, but I think you're wrong. I think you're probably right, because Seattle's going to come down and score even after DC scores and then not get the conversion attempt. But it's not, again, I don't think it's because it's a shame if they go through this season and they don't make it in the playoffs. It really is, because I think they have a shot. They have as good a shot as anybody else on a good day, but they play in the North Division.
I need to post. I have a shorts this week I need to post about us talking a couple weeks ago. Is the XFL playoff system broken? Do you have any other added thoughts on that now, knowing that basically Seattle's got to come down? We got to beat St. Louis next week, and then we got to beat Vegas, and then there's got to be like Mike's said, he's messaging people from the teams, and there needs to be the point spreads and all that. Are you any other added thoughts to Seattle potentially missing the playoffs?
I think you just go into next week as a playoff game. That's it. Like, it's St. Louis or it's Seattle. I think that's the only way you really treat it, in my opinion. I know there's a bajillion tiebreakers next week in the Battlehawks. That's it. Like, that is your de facto playoff game. I know it's only week 9, but that's how I would treat it for both teams. And I think both teams are going to be coming out with all guns blazing, because that's it. That's your second spot. So for me, it's a shame for either one. Like, I feel bad about either St. Louis or Seattle. That sucks. Like, those are two very quality teams that both deserve their opportunities. And look, okay, maybe Arlington plays better down the stretch. I don't know. Maybe they finish 6-4 with Perez. Okay, cool. But we've seen them week in and week out as an offensive operation. It's not a sexy view. It really is not. It's something that is going to be a little harder for fans to digest when they watch a team like Seattle and watch a team that's won 5 in a row, watch a team like St. Louis, and somehow one of those two teams doesn't end up making it into the dance. There's going to be a lot of questions, because Arlington has been subpar, quite frankly, and Houston hasn't been that great. Houston's got some problems too now. Look, they haven't really been kicking it on offense. I know Brandon Silvers came back in and he played okay. He had some really up and down moments in that game. Obviously, he turned it over twice, had some inopportune interceptions. That team misses John Trey Kirkland really badly. They need somebody to step up on offense of the receiving core, because they're not going to win a title this way. I mean, that's the other thing. The North Division feels like it's their title to lose in some ways. I know it's a long way off, but that's where all the power goes in this league right now.
We'll get to that. One other thought I just had, because we'll talk Houston and everything else. Did DiNucci do enough this week? I know he had the batted ball, the interception, turnover. After the game, we had, because we were on the front row there, we had kids coming over asking to get an autograph, and I saw someone tweet about that, right? That hey, DiNucci coming over, and he was talking to the kids and all that kind of stuff. Building up. I think personality-wise, I think DiNucci is one of the faces, but we've talked about kind of his, is he playing his way out of an NFL window here? I mean, what did you make of him here? 28 of 42. Some of these stats for Seattle always amuses me, but is Ben doing enough here to kind of rebound?
I think so. Again, it's just a matter of him just not getting into these just wild turnovers again. It's really it's his gunslinger mode. I mean, if he came out after that game and said, my favorite player is Brett Favre, I wouldn't be surprised, because he plays like him in a lot of ways. He is just an absolute gunslinger. Look, he's got a great arm. His talent is immense. He knows how to spot that ball sometimes. There's a 50-50 element when I see him drop back and he cocks it back, because I'm like, this is either going to be great or this is going to be horrendous. And that's how I feel every time he chucks that ball. But his ability also, again, just to continue running too, like his ability to just get out and get yards and run run away from defenders is really underrated, and it's something that I think gives them a great element when they're not choosing to run the ball as much, which I wish they kind of did a little bit more in this game. I wish they didn't abandon it so much and just keep DC's offense off the field. I mean, that's the thing. DC could just grind Seattle down as much as they wanted to. Giving a lead to DC in the fourth quarter is almost a death sentence. They almost came back from it, but it's really hard to if you let DC get that kind of a lead. I mean, they took off. That's the thing. They took off half the fourth quarter at one point. I think they had like a 7-minute drive to begin that quarter, and it's just hard to come back from that. And for DiNucci, I think he'll get some camp looks. I still think he needs time to develop. I want to see kind of the same run he's had, like Tamu has had the last 3 weeks. Like Tamu clearly has earned himself another chance to get another camp. Like his development is clear as day, obviously, based as a passer, and also his toughness. I mean, that guy got hit. Did you see him with his stingers and how hard he got? I mean, he was struggling to get off the field sometimes, and he just got back in there and he kept chucking. He tough SOB in that game too.
Look, moving on here, Jenna is talking. The Renegades will show up in the playoffs. We'll get to the Renegades here in a minute. Mark's adding DiNucci needs a signature win. I mean, they won 5 in a row. But I did have a lot of people, Seattle fans, my normal XFL people, like, oh yeah, the Seattle team's really good. Like they've won 5 in a row. I mean, I do feel like there's a little bit existing here, kind of heading in. So we got we'll pull this up here. We got Roughnecks at Brahmas. What the heck is going on with the Roughnecks here? Really seem to be struggling. Like he said, Brandon played coming in. What are we making of everything going on with Evan Wills, Morris Houston Roughnecks? Brandon Silver, 17 of 36. Oh,
yeah, really inconsistent play. Again, they seem to have abandoned the run, and they also can't seem to get any consistency on the ground again, which is one of the biggest problems I had when they started off 4-0. I said they need to keep running the ball. They kind of did in Orlando, but they have not really been able to match that since then. And that's a big problem for me. They have to be able to get more balance. You can't just have Silvers chucking it so much because, quite frankly, that Kirkland injury really is hurting them. It really is. They don't have the same threat downfield as they did before. I know Deontay Burnett's still great. I mean, he caught a touchdown. Michael Bandy's coming in there and contributing. You still, you want Justin Smith to step up a little bit more. That's a guy that I've heard a lot about, and that's what Evans talked about him quite a bit. Trevell Harris, you have a lot of options here on offense, but just not that guy. That's the problem. They're missing that X receiver, and they're not getting that separation that they were at the beginning of the season when it was just kind of like, all right, well, let's just throw it to Kirkland and see what happens. And that really helped them a lot. And again, look, AJ Smith, I mean, still a brilliant play designer. Maybe it's just not working right now. Silver's obviously, I think he's also struggling with the mystery as far as what his injury has also kind of predicated how much of his play has changed recently, right? Like first he was reported with, I think it was an arm injury, and then it became an elbow injury or one or the other. It's kind of unclear as to what it is, but clearly whatever it is, it must be affecting him because he did not play very well on Sunday. And quite frankly, they should have stomped San Antonio. Like there's no excuse that this game should have gone to overtime. None whatsoever. This game should have been over like by the third quarter because San Antonio was not doing anything on offense.
Well, I just can't figure out. We'll talk Brahmas. I just can't figure out. Yeah, like is it AJ getting exposed, the Silvers injury, losing Kirkland? Like, is it just the combination of all of those? Can you point it to any single thing? I don't know. It does feel like AJ's, and he's friend of the show. I mean, one of the favorite OCs, but I don't know, getting exposed a little bit. I mean, is it a confluence of everything? What do you make?
I mean, I think it's multiple factors. Again, I think it's just the fact that you've had inconsistent quarterback play. Silvers with the injury. Cole McDonald, they're still throwing him in there and using him. They used him in the conversion attempts in overtime. So they still are keen on using him occasionally, just maybe not as much as they were before after his lackluster performance against St. Louis. Again, they just need to be able to find some sort of semblance of balance. I mean, 19 incompletions, that's tough. Like, that's just a lot of wasted plays, and it's a lot of punts. It's a lot of 3 and outs. Like, that's really tough to have as an offense if you're going to be able to keep your defense off the field, which, the defense had been getting shredded the last couple of weeks, and they finally had a good performance, which, granted, is not really hard to have against San Antonio, but this was supposed to be a get-right game for Houston. I'm not sure how much they really got right besides maybe on defense. And even then, they sort of let up at the end of regulation. You had that penalty called on Ajini Harris, and you had them convert the 4th and 15 after they got a touchdown and then kick the field goal to tie it and go into overtime. There's a lot going on here. I think they just have to be able to commit themselves to one element. I think they need to run the ball more. Like I said, I want to see Borgie get involved. I want to see Dijon Lee. I want to see Bryson Aline. I want to see them become a little bit more tougher because they're going to need that toughness, because I think the North teams are like those teams are physical. They score a lot of points, but those teams are physical. They know how to match up and they really game plan really well. There's so much tinkering they have to do. And look, they're in the right division to do it, but they have to figure something out in the next few weeks, or else I don't know how much of a chance they're going to have against anybody who comes from the North.
Yeah, this was like I saw it. This just was supposed to be a get right game. It's supposed to be a get right. Kraken played last night. They played Arizona, won 4-1. Like, there's just games you're supposed to come in, you're supposed to win. You're not supposed to go to overtime. Against the Brahmas. Jack Cohn here, 23 or 41. Obviously Ben Kurt going down and Paxton Lynch being inactive. I don't even think Paxton Lynch at this point. I'm kind of surprised they even did that trade. Like, what is even the point here? What do you make? Anything else from the Brahmas?
I mean, Jack Cohn had absolutely no prayer when he got sacked 6 times. The Houston defense was just eating him alive. I mean, Wade Phillips' scheme played the way it was supposed to play against this team. They got the turnovers, they got the sacks, they did everything they needed to. They set up Houston's offense. I mean, that was one of the touchdowns for Houston. It was on a very short field. So, Houston, while they weren't moving the ball very much, they got completely outgained by the Brahmas, like by about 100 yards. And yet their defense still stepped up pretty well. I like to see that Jarquez Patrick is finally getting his burn. I said that he was probably the best running back on the roster. I was never really a huge Kalen Balaj fan. I'm sorry, but I just wasn't. And it sucks that he has the Achilles injury. He's out for the season, but Jarquez has been a revelation. He's really been quite good for them. The Landon Akers thing, man, he's really effective. He's sort of the guy that you need to feed the ball to, but the problem is that he just was hurt for so long for the first half of the season. I think that would have helped them a lot more early on in the year. I see a lot of playmakers that just aren't getting the burn that they should. DJ Vasher should have more than one catch, like straight up. Elise Mack is good, but they need to keep him factored into the red zone. There's a lot here. Like, there's a lot of good pieces here that they can use, but there's just so much inconsistency. I mean, they went through Jaime Elizondo. They didn't quite get that right early in the season. Obviously, they've gone through 4 different quarterbacks, which is ridiculous. If you put Paxton Lynch in there, you got 5 in one season, in a 10-game season, 5 quarterbacks. I mean, that's once every 2 weeks. That's so you can't build any consistency that way. You can't build rapport. So for San Antonio, I mean, and it's a shame because their defense is really good. They have guys balling out on defense. They are always in games. They always keep themselves in games. That defense and the special teams, where John Parker Romo is probably the best thing that's going for them. Their kicker, he's been outstanding. But again, as I said a couple weeks ago, when that's your best factor on offense, that's not a good sign. And for San Antonio, it's just kind of a lost cause, a lost season. And I think there's a lot that Hines Ward can figure out too. I think as a coach, win the challenge, what kind of challenges he can do. But I think they've just been kind of snake bit, kind of like Vegas, honestly. They remind me a lot of Vegas, where it's just a lot of bad luck and a lot of unfortunate circumstances that kind of led them to this moment. And I mean, look, they're not technically out of it, but I don't see how this is going to get better in the next 2 weeks.
How much blame do you put on Hines Ward?
I put some, but not. I don't know if you want a percentage, but I don't think I put a lot on him, just because I still think he's figuring it out. I think in the coaching hierarchy, I think he's been about mid-tier, better than Buckley, probably better than Rod Woodson, which we'll get into later on. But I mean, I think he's fine. It's just there's a lot to figure out as far as I think there's a lot of maybe roster construction here that didn't quite work out, especially with the receivers, which I like a lot. But it's tough. I want there to be a better consistent product here overall, and I just haven't seen it. I haven't seen it from San Antonio's end. I haven't seen it from the end of anybody here. So it's really tough. Really is.
If I hop off here for a minute, you'll just keep on going here. Give any other thoughts on this game? I'm going to hop right back on. I got to get some water.
Of course. Look, like I said, I'm I feel bad because San Antonio, I thought, could have had a chance to do better here on offense. Also, their crowd was not as present as I was hoping as well. I know, again, we talked about the Easter thing, but they haven't really gotten the numbers that they should have in the stadium. We obviously saw the Commanders. They had about 28,000 fans during the AAF days. They were able to draw people. San Antonio was pumped up as being one of the big markets. They had about 24,000 their first week. The Brahmas did against the St. Louis Battlehawks in the last couple of games. They just haven't really been able to draw those same numbers. Yeah, you would have thought that San Antonio was going to get those better numbers, but at the same time, you haven't really been able to get those numbers because A, the performance of the team, and B, maybe some of the start times. So if San Antonio as a market, I hope can show its true form, because I think it can. I think it can be one of the best markets in the XFL, but it hasn't been like, battle. Obviously, it's not even close to Battle numbers, but I think a lot of people, including me, were having more expectations of like, okay, they'll be close to that, or they'll be around, the Battle Dome atmosphere. They'll have, 30,000 screaming fans and be really into it. But they've got a lot of legwork to do too.
I've seen a lot of negativity about that. The San Antonio should be doing more, and like the attendance, and they should be maxing out every week. It's hard. I've had Scott Bailey, he's with the Sports Journal down there, saying they haven't done enough marketing. It just, if you're gonna go in there, it just doesn't feel like they've ever really capitalized like they should have. Same with Seattle, but I just think there was a lot more expectations for San Antonio. Darren saying here, they need to be one of the flagship franchises of the league, but they need to win. That's the thing too. Mike's tweeting, the team's no good. Why are you going to go? You're not going to pay $50 to go watch a team that's not any good. At some point, the team needs to be competitive if they want to draw attendance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I mean, and the Commanders were, obviously, the San Antonio Commanders were battling for a division title when they were in there, and they won their first game on CBS. It was a whole thing. Like they were competitive. So that is part of it, but I still think they should be drawing those numbers regardless of their performance, in my opinion. Like if St. Louis was below 500, do they still get 35,000 people? I still argue that they get a lot of people, even if they're below 500. That's just me.
Yeah. Mark says here, I go, San Antonio is struggling. Their offense is really hard to watch. It's just a bad team that plays in a very low scoring game. It's hard to sit through. It is. I understand that. Talking another kind of low scoring game here, one that I think maybe people had higher expectations for. We have the Guardians, Renegades, 18-16. Kind of felt like this was the turnover game, and who wants the ball less, who wants it more. Thoughts on Bob Stoops here, team getting the W, but still, never looking too dominant.
Renegades fans, I hope you like heart palpitations, because that's what you're going to get every time you watch this team. It's just going to be this way of play the entire season. Look, again, Luis Perez did his job. He came in, kept it steady, moved the ball enough. Everything was fine with him. Everything around him is what the problem was. This Arlington team, I mean, I could have said they should have scored more points. I believe that, but it's just, there's some wacky stuff going on in this game. You had a play literally where Dormady throws an interception, and then the guy returning the ball fumbles it, and it goes right back to the Guardians. In one play there was 2 turnovers. It was just an absolutely wacky game. A lot of circus play, just ball flying all over the place. It was really wild. Dormady, it's a shame, because I really thought, I know this Arlington defense is really good, and they have been all season. That's been their calling card. But I thought Dormady was going to have a better game. And while he had the yardage totals, obviously the interceptions, the fumbles were just, backbreaking. And the offensive line, obviously, still not doing him any favors. Never have, never will. But I think this is a case where maybe his maturation is still coming along. He's still developing, still needs that consistency, because we've seen him do it, obviously. Played spectacular against Vegas. Played amazing against DC. He can do those sorts of things. He just might need more steadiness when things don't go right. Is he could be able to have the right mindset to keep himself in, kind of have amnesia when he, as a quarterback. Can he forget about the previous play and just continue playing? I think that's something that he's going to have to work out. I don't know if this is the coaching staff for him to figure that out, because quite frankly, I think Buckley also had, again, some horrendous decisions. Why on earth, when they are down, a single score, they score a touchdown and they go for 1 to go 18-16 instead of going for a 3? what does that help you with? I get there was 4 minutes left and they could still get a stop on defense, but at that point you need to start playing for ties, my guy. Like that's not that this is not the time to be hoping that and praying that your defense is going to make a play. I know it's against the Renegades, but I don't agree with that philosophy at all. It's like the polar opposite of every other team in the league. And I just think that this Guardians operation is just all over the place. It's a mess. For Dormady's sake, I hope he is able to get, more consistency from the staff going forward, because there's some real potential here. I mean, he had another 300-yard game. Like those, you don't just hand those out in spring football, and he had another one. So it's disappointing. It could have been better. I really thought the Guardians had a chance to win and really make some noise in the South Division. Obviously, they're out of it now. They've been officially eliminated. It's that kind of season. I mean, it was detonation from the start.
Yeah, it was exciting. It was exciting to have a little bit of hope there, right? Are we done with the Orlando games too? Do we play there again now that they're eliminated?
I mean, you play in Orlando. I mean, I know the show out has not been amazing, but like Danny's not giving up on this. Are you kidding me? Like she's
No, but
not.
I mean, are they done? Yeah, so they're done with home
Oh,
games.
Orlando.
So
Yeah.
yeah. So
okay.
that's good. Yeah, I did see Danny tweet about that. I thought that was exciting. But I mean, you don't think the Orlando experiments failed? I mean, you think there's enough juice there to go back?
I think they should try it again. I mean, I know it's hard to fill that stadium. It's quite large, but I don't think you give up on it necessarily. I think it's the same thing as Seattle. It's just like, just let's try this again and build it back up. I think there is potential in the Orlando franchise. I know we've made fun of everything from the jerseys to the roster construction to the coaching staff to everything about it. We've made fun of, obviously, but that's the thing. I think that it's a matter of this team needs to play better and they need to present themselves better. And Danny needs to keep blowing her trumpet down there, because that's what's going to be able to get the people into the stands. That's something they have to keep working on. But I think there's potential to continue with this franchise. I just they need to wipe the slate clean and start over, because it just did not work this season at all. But all that being said, the Maulers are still the worst team of the two.
I enjoyed seeing our chairwoman get a little chippy on Twitter this weekend, and tweeting about all 4 quarters and the great overtime win. And I said I love it, and she responded to me. I said that's step number one. Step number one, getting the chairwoman responding. Final game, which I kind of thought was going to be the only, who would have thought we would have got 2 overtime games the first weekend here, but the Vipers going into the Dome, this was exciting. We had the Nick Tiano show out, and then was he really that good doing the helicopter? That got a lot of impressions. This was a hot, exciting game. What were your general thoughts on this?
That fake punt call is the call of the season. That was amazing call by that staff. I have been so impressed by Becton, his entire operation. Like, he has just hit all the right buttons this entire year. Every time this St. Louis team comes into a game and you think, I don't know if they're going to have the horses today. I don't know if they're going to have the juice to deal with this problem. Adrian McCarron's out. You don't know how their offense is going to run. We have no idea what Nick Tiano looks like at all. And did he have the most amazing performance? No, but was he gutsy? Absolutely. I mean, he had a John Elway-esque helicopter spin on a conversion attempt that was absolutely nuts. That guy was really gritty the entire day. And this whole team, I think that's the whole mantra of the team really is just grit and toughness. I know that's cliche, but like it really is. I mean, they keep themselves in every single game. I really am just so immensely impressed with St. Louis and how they're able to kind of feed off the energy of their crowd, be able to keep themselves in games, just be able to push the right buttons at the right time. Their offense, I mean, they had some turnovers. They were sloppy. They had a rough start to the game, and they also had a rough third quarter, and they just couldn't really get it going. But, man, just some heroics by random players. And I think one of the biggest things that Beck has talked about a lot, too, is just utilizing the full roster, right? Last week against Houston, he said all 51 guys played on the roster. Everyone played and contributed. And I think you feel the same way here, right? Everybody came in and contributed, even the backup quarterback, and I think that's the mantra of the entire team. It doesn't really matter who comes in and sort of contributes on offense, defense, special teams. They're going to find a way to utilize your skill set, and they're going to use it correctly. I'm just really impressed by their toughness and their ability to weather a lot of storms.
Yeah, Nick was great. This was exciting. It seems like he kind of came down to earth, felt like he kind of came out hot, and then didn't quite excel the whole way through. But it was enough. They made it through. Jalen McClendon here did good. It certainly wasn't the first week. Is it? I've seen people put on here, comments. We get like these new quarterbacks. There's not enough tape, and then they come back down to earth a couple weeks later. Is that what's happening with Jalen McClendon here, or is it St. Louis defense just that much better than it was? His kind of show out game last week.
I mean, I think they were prepared for him a little bit better than San Antonio was, but I still like Jalen McClendon a lot. I think his skill set is really solid. I mean, he adds that element of running, obviously, that just absolutely kills your defense when you're trying to spy the guy and also keep tabs on all of his passing options. I mean, they still ran the ball quite effectively here in this game. And I still think that McClendon, I think he has a future. He reminds me a lot of, I'm not sure what his comp is exactly, but he just seems like he needs to develop more. I think he needs more playing time. And that's the thing I also want to take tabs of this XFL season too. We've talked a lot about, in the CFL, it takes time for guys to acclimate themselves and get ready and prepared for the CFL game and be able to become effective, right? Nathan Rourke took some time. Chad Kelly's kind of going through that right now. I think the same principle needs to be applied here in the spring league, especially here, because the XFL has given opportunities to some players who you clearly see some potential in. You see potential in Dormady. You see potential in McClendon. You see potential in DiNucci, but you still sit there and say, well, they could use a little bit more time. They need a little bit more. They just need time to develop and sort of marinate their skill set. And I think that can happen. I think you can get guys like McClendon to stick around maybe another year. I know he might get into a camp and might get into a practice squad and all that, but for his sake, for his development, I think he needs to stay around another year. And Rod Woodson's squad needs to give him another chance because I think there's something here with him as far as running this operation, because there's something that he can really build on and this Vegas team can build on, because they've just been agonizingly close this year to winning some of these games. I mean, they're not that far off. They're not a 2-6 team, but it's just broken that way for them for various reasons.
Yeah, it's hard here. I'm seeing that Mike has a comment. I wonder if the Brahmas would be like if they traded for Huntley instead of Benkirk. I don't know. Max says Benkirk was definitely easier to acquire. It's I don't know. It's hard. Let's see here. I want to look more any other thoughts on Tiano here? Do you think he has a future? Do we see him back? I mean, obviously we have AJ McCarron. We're kind of nursing that, but what's Tiano's future here? Is he going anywhere? Is he coming back next year?
I think he's coming back. I think he's definitely still a backup option, but I do think he has proven that he can, do what the coaching staff tells him to do. So that's a really big plus for him. He's going to be able to stick around and be able to serve that role. Clearly Ryan Willis didn't want to play backup to AJ McCarron, but Nick Tiano wanted to, and he did his job. So I think from that standpoint, yes, I think he comes back and, maybe he gets to compete for a spot next year and maybe a starting spot, but this is the exact role that he was put in. And he's going to continue to be playing this role, I think, going into next year as well.
Any other thoughts on this game? We'll get into the standings before we get out. We'll keep this at an hour today. If anyone else has any comments on here, but anything else from this game or the other four before we kind of do the playoff preview here?
Again, I'm so immensely impressed with St. Louis just weathering the storm. That overtime victory, obviously very emphatic for them. The home crowd going nuts, being the first ever overtime game. Isn't it just poetic for the XFL that it was in the Battle Dome? It was in front of St. Louis. Like, that was just perfect for them. That it could not have happened any better for them, honestly. And get that rating on cable on ESPN. That is like perfect for the XFL. It's like tailor made, especially given the circumstances, because they lose that game. Now Seattle comes in with different implications. Obviously, that they needed that win badly. So I think for them, it's great. For Vegas, look, man, Rod Woodson's got some stuff to figure out too. He can't call that fake field goal. I know I supported it in the moment. In the hindsight, I'm like, no, that was a terrible decision. I think as much as I thought the execution of it looked fun, that's not what you want to do. Like, you need to keep trusting your kicker and just let him continue to swing his leg, because you're in a tight ball game and you need those points. So you kept those points, that's the difference, right? You're not going to overtime. Maybe, St. Louis can't score. They'd have to score a touchdown instead of kicking a field goal, and maybe they don't get it. So
that was really bad. That was the fake. And I think like Seattle's got special teams, good, they have a good special teams. I just don't know if we're elite enough special teams here in the XFL to be pulling these fake punts. And it was a 38-yard field goal kick. Like, just let him kick it. I just think we're overthinking that there. It felt like.
Yeah. No, I did too, and I think he took ownership of that afterwards too. He at least admitted like that was not a good call on my part. But Rod Rudson's got a lot of things to figure out too, and maybe him and the refs can also hash it out a little bit too, because I know that's again we had the same thing in overtime with them too. There was an offensive pass interference that was called on Martavis Bryant that was kind of questionable, and he was not having that either. Like there's a lot of ticky tackiness in that St. Louis game too, as much as there was in the Seattle DC game as well.
Yeah, Max reminding here. I tweeted this out. XFL, they're going to be kind of voting to do all their union stuff here coming up, so that's exciting. Working towards that as well with the USFL on that. Don't forget live today and then Friday our episode. Andy's going to be joining. I'll tweet out the guests this week. Big live USFL preview, pre-show Friday. It's going to be 8 a.m. So a little different, but coming to you live if you have any comments. Otherwise, I don't want to go live on Saturday because there's XFL games and these USFL games and everything's kind of overlapping. So we'll do a big slate, big roundtable kind of panel on Friday, talk through all of that. We'll talk through XFL week 9 and then obviously the USFL weekend. Exciting times. Are you looking forward to next weekend?
It's gonna be wild. I think I tweeted into our group chat that maybe I should consider starting a red zone channel, being Scott Hansen, because all of a sudden we're gonna have all this parallel action going on. It's gonna be absolutely crazy. I never dreamed of a world where there'd be 2 spring leagues going on at the same time and be multiple games of both leagues going on at the same time. Like that's really insane. And it's gonna be, for a spring football fan, it's an absolute dream. For us, it's just a lot of work because we got to start covering, keeping our head on a swivel on 2 different ends now, 2 different spectrums. But it's going to be fun. I can't wait for the show. I can't wait for this weekend, and just to see what happens when these 2 leagues go head to head. This is unprecedented. This is an unprecedented weekend in the history of this niche sport that we cover.
Yeah, so check it out. It'll be 8 a.m. Pacific. I think we'll probably try to go for an hour and a half or so, but that'll be fun. We're gonna have some old fan favorites on there. But like I said, I think everyone wants to be watching all the games on Saturday, so we'll kind of partake in all that. Pulling up the standings here before we get out. Obviously, DC here clinching at least a playoff spot, 7-1. Seattle basically has to win out and have some other fluky math happen. Vegas kind of out of it here. Any other thoughts on the North? We'll talk. South's a little more interesting, maybe not. Any other thoughts on the XFL North Division?
I mean, DC's that team. They really are. They've been that team the entire season. And look, a 3-way tie would have been awesome. It would have been so fun to go into the next couple of weeks just suddenly thinking, well, maybe DC is not going to make the playoffs, which would just have been absolutely buck wild. But now, I mean, they've asserted their dominance. They swept both these teams. They did their job, and they are not backing down at all. Now they still have to play. Let's see. They still have to play a couple more games here and see if they can get the division title, which I think they will. I presume that they will, but they are obviously in great standing. Still have another home game to play, I believe. And they're in the driver's seat. They get to play at home against Arlington. Yeah, there we go. They play home against Arlington, and they can do whatever they want on offense. Like I said, they have full control of their operation. As far as Seattle St. Louis game, like I said, that's a playoff game. That's it. That's your season for both teams, in my opinion. I know there's still some scenarios in week 10, all that, blah blah blah, but that's it. I think that's your game. So for the North Division, I mean, again, great quality football. Even Vegas, even as the bottom feeder team, is just great quality. It has good talent, has a lot going for them on certain skill positions, but they just can't get it together and just win enough games. But yeah, I mean, the North Division has been one of the most competitive, more competitive than either division in the USFL last year, in my opinion.
Mark has a question. No, the playoffs aren't set. Seattle can still catch up here. They would have to win out, and then obviously St. Louis would have to drop one. But it's certainly not as exciting as it would have been with a tie there with Seattle and St. Louis. But this will be the Sunday night game here. Seattle at St. Louis. I think it's got to be the last kind of high stakes game of the season. I think it's in and around kind of when the USFL plays, so people can enjoy that. Is that your most, I guess, anticipated matchup next weekend?
Oh, easily. Absolutely. It's going to be absolutely rocking there. And the St. Louis fans are going to be absolutely unhinged again, as they have been all season. This is their game. This is their opportunity to formally punch their playoff ticket and bring Kaká to the playoffs.
That'll be good. Max has a question we'll get to before we get out. Last thing in the South, a little more wonky here. I can't believe the Renegades at 500, Brahmas 2-6. Any other thoughts on the XFL South division? And then Max has a question before we get out.
I mean, you're looking at a 4-6 or 5-5 Arlington team finishing out the season, in my opinion. I don't think they're going to win in DC this weekend, so I think you still have that going on. Houston just needs to, like I said, they need to just keep tuning up and just figure out a way to win these last couple of games and just look better overall and just, find something that they can establish themselves with in the playoffs in the South Division Championship game, because whatever it is, they have to figure it out. Their goal right now is to figure it out before they ultimately presumably get into the championship game. Like, I like Arlington, but I just don't, a long-term run, I don't think they have much to work with. If they go to Houston, I don't think that I really give them much of a chance, but I think Houston themselves also have to be able to, get themselves out of this just slump that they've been in the last 4 weeks. They have to be able to resurrect themselves somehow. And the South, it is what it is. There's a lot of different reasons why that didn't go well, but you know what? Next year, maybe it's the opposite. Maybe the North completely tanks and the South looks great. You never know with these spring leagues. They can always just flip around in 1 year because there's so much turnover, roster turnover, coaches leaving. We'll see how the offseason goes in that regard. But obviously, the South is the less enviable option to watch on TV. You want to watch those North games more so.
Last question for Max here. We'll get out of here. Should every XFL coach be retained for next season? What about DPPs? I think regardless, Larry Lee over in Orlando needs to go. Do we give? I know all the coaches are signed for at least 2 years. I think 3. I think was Becht was saying, but should all the coaches come back next year?
I think Buckley is going to get another chance. People can argue as to whether he should get another chance, but I think he's going to be given one. And as far as everyone else, I think you keep Hines, you keep Rod if he wants to continue coaching. Obviously, you keep Becht. You got to keep Becht in this league. I mean, he's he's one of the faces of the league. Barlow's awesome. You hope that he doesn't leave because he's just been so rock solid for DC. That would be a shame, but he's afforded himself the opportunity. Haslett, I'm not so sure. I want to see with him. Is he committed? I want to see how committed he is to the Seattle.
I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill you.
I'm sure you will for me saying that. I'm sure. Like, I just hope that he is able to, go through the offseason program. If there's an NFL team that's going to court him, we'll see what happens with that. Obviously, June Jones is still flying around there. Does he, assume the throne? Ron Zook. It's a great coaching staff. You want to retain a lot of those guys. It's just a matter of, somebody comes calling, they might, go run and get money somewhere else. So it's hard. Seattle is a hard one to figure out. Arlington, I don't know. I think there's going to be some shakeup there. Bob Stoops, I think, will stick around, but I think there's going to be a lot of other a lot of positional coaches that might not be surviving this season. So there is going to be some turnover. Your XFL, as the XFL, you hope that most of them return. Some of them are probably going to leave. There's going to be turnover. I think that's inevitable, but I think the biggest one, I think for sure the one I feel really confident about is Becht. I think Becht sticks around another year.
Yeah, Becht's good. Rob Woodson's, we'll see there. Barlow, I think, Barlow looks good there in DC, everything else. Well, that will do it today. I appreciate everyone kind of getting through this. We're here at the Luxor and on vacation, everything else. I know my voice is not ideal today, so I appreciate everyone working through that. Like I said, we'll be here live. I'll be back home, but live Friday, we're going to have a big slate of guests, Andy and a lot of other people joining for our big USFL pre-show and then XFL Week 9 preview, since we talk all the different leagues on here. Should be excited, and I'll get some more CFL content as well when I get back in town. Yeah, Andy, anything else before we get out of here?
You're a trooper. Go take some throat lozenges and drink some water and get ready for round 2, buddy.
Awesome, guys. Well, thanks again. Like and subscribe. We'll see you Friday on here. I'll post some other shorts this week as well. Those have been really fun on the YouTube channel. I will play the outro music, and we will get out of here. Thanks again, guys.